Again, good morning. I understand we have everybody on, and I'll go ahead and get started. Before us today is the protest hearing for miscellaneous professional engineers, stormwater modeling services, RPS 19296.2, which has been filed by Applied Sciences Consulting. Prior to us getting started, I'll go ahead and talk about what the rules and the process is going to be for today. I anticipate that this will be a long day, so I want us to go ahead and understand what all the rules are. What we will do is we will start the hearing, and I will ask for any procedural motion. So if any party would like to bring a procedural motion, not related to the evidence and testimony, but simply a procedural matter, I'll ask for that to be brought up first. After that time, I will swear witnesses. I'd like to swear all the witnesses at the beginning so that we don't have an issue having to stop and start. After that time, we will have a general statement from the county, Hillsborough County, regarding the statement of facts. After that time, the appealing party will have the opportunity to present evidence and testimony. That time and all the time of all the parties is limited to 2 hours, and I will be monitoring the time. After the appealing party has the opportunity to present their evidence and testimony, the interested parties will have an opportunity to present their evidence and testimony, and there is one interested party that has filed to be part of this hearing. After that, Hillsborough County will have the opportunity to present its testimony and evidence. After that time, we will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Again, parties' presentations are limited to 2 hours. There's 15 minutes also that each party has, including the interested parties, for rebuttal. As it relates to cross-examination will be allowed in a limited format, meaning if you would like to ask any of the witnesses from either party questions, those questions need to be directed through me to make sure that this doesn't turn into traditional cross-examination, but you do have the right to make sure those questions are asked. If it is easier, you can go ahead and email that questions to me during this proceeding, because obviously this is a little bit of an interesting scenario where nobody is actually in-house. But you have to email those to all the parties. Otherwise, you will need to make the request to stop the proceedings so that I can go ahead and have those questions be asked, and we will do that orderly. The only question I do have is for our technical staff. Is there like a raise hand feature on this or anything like that? Because I'm not on the WebEx. Should I be getting on the WebEx? Okay. All right, I think we should be able to use our raise hand feature also on this proceeding. So if you need to stop the proceedings for any reason, go ahead and use the raised hand feature that is within the WebEx. In terms of a break, we will take what, I'm sorry.
If I could speak real quick.
Please.
For everyone on WebEx, on the bottom right of the screen, you should see a button that says participants. If you click on that button, it will bring up a list of all the speakers. Your name should be on top. If you bring your mouse up next to your name, there should be a little hand, you should see a little raise hand button. When you click that, you will raise your hand and we'll be able to see you here.
And for the purposes of the record, what was your name?
My name is Christian Lampy.
Okay, thank you. And that's with Hillsborough County Technical Staff.
Yes.
And that does remind me, we do have a court reporter. So it is very important that as you are speaking, that you say your name prior to speaking, so that can be taken down by the court reporter. And we have to make very much every effort to not talk over each other. Admittedly, I also am not the best at that as well. So I will ask the court reporter who's on the line to feel free to interrupt us at any time, to ask us to either slow down or give you the information you need to take the accurate transcript of this proceeding. And at this time, I'll see if there's any either questions regarding the proceedings, or alternatively, if any of the parties have any procedural motions that they would wish to raise at this time.
This is Joe Goldstein for the protester. None from us, Ms. Mandel.
Thank you. Are there any other procedural motions?
None from the county, Ms. Mandel.
Thank you.
And none from,
And with that, we'll, from the intervener party, is there any procedural motions?
no, Ms. Mandel, no procedural motions from Atkins.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the general statement of facts from Hillsborough County. That is a separate matter. It's just the general statement of facts and is not counted against anybody's time. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Mandel. Ken Poe for Hillsborough County. It is well established that the county enjoys a reasonable degree of discretion in the evaluation of proposals, and such discretion must not be disturbed unless shown to be clearly arbitrary or in violation of applicable policies and law. Hillsborough County's Evaluation Committee followed the Consultant Competitive Negotiation Act when it used consensus scoring to select the top 3 firms to be evaluated or awarded the miscellaneous professional engineering stormwater modeling services contract, RSP 19296.2. Evaluator Marcelo Tavaneri did not improperly consider applied sciences right-of-way experience or misapply such experience to the selection criteria. For these reasons, applied sciences protest should be denied.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the next portion of the hearing, which is the appealing party at this time. Well, actually, before we get started on that, let me go ahead and if there's witnesses that are on the line right now, let's go ahead and swear in all the witnesses so we can make sure that that is accomplished. If any witnesses are not on the line and you anticipate someone will join later, please let me know so we can make sure that they are sworn in. So I'll ask all witnesses to go ahead and raise their right hand. I swear and affirm that I will tell the truth, only the truth, and so help me God. Thank you.
I will, thank you.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. With the witnesses being sworn, we'll go ahead and proceed to the appealing party. The appealing party's presentation, you have 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and set a timer on that so that we can go ahead and proceed. It is not my expectation that I will ask any questions during your presentation. That being said, I may ask questions after your presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel.
You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Mandel. This is Joe Goldstein from Schutz & Bowen on behalf of Applied Sciences Consulting, Inc., the protester. With me today is Andrew Schwartz, also from Schutz & Bowen, and our client representative, Eli Araj, from Applied Sciences. First, very pleased that the hearing master and opposing counsel and witnesses, the protest appeal should be sustained. And we're real appreciative that that we have this opportunity to be with you today. I'm trying to get used to looking at my face as I'm talking. It's a little bit different than if we were there in person, and unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, this is the safest and best way to proceed. And I think all of us have had sufficient experience with it now. So we appreciate that opportunity. What we're going to do today in preparing for today's hearing, it became readily apparent to us that based on our filings and the information in the record, that we're going to initially stick predominantly with just our oral argument, pointing out to documents and evidence in the record that's not in the dispute. So we might not even call Mr. Araj because it would be somewhat repetitive of what materials in the record. We certainly reserve the right to do it in our 2 hours or during rebuttal if necessary. But our intention here is to point out in the record where the county has erred as a matter of law and has acted arbitrarily and capricious. Just a little bit of background about Applied Sciences. They are one of the 3 incumbent contractors on this existing contract. They've been in place since 2016. Hillsborough County uses a program where under an acronym of CAPES, which is the Consultant Automated Performance Evaluation System. And in the initial round for qualifications and for shortlisting, it's your CAPE score that determines your past performance score to determine who is the most qualified. And in the record at pages 211 through 212, incorporating our bid protest and those exhibits, it was exhibit 11 to that protest, you can see that Applied Sciences had the highest CAPE score of any of the incumbent contractors. And I bring that up in the introduction because despite having the best CAPE score, this automated system that the county uses, Applied Sciences ended up being the only incumbent contractor not being re-included in this contract. Now, Mr. Araj, the principal of Applied, reminds me that Applied Sciences also has been doing stormwater engineering services beyond this incumbent contract since going back to 2005. And Mr. Raj was a engineer, stormwater engineer with the county for 10 years prior to being with Applied Sciences. So a long history of experience and the highest past performance rating, yet not making this contract. There are 3 bases for why, Ms. Mandel, you should sustain this bid protest. The first one, the county erred as a matter of law, and this is a de novo review for this issue. It's not a factual standard. There's no facts in dispute, but the county erred in a matter of law, violating its own procurement manual, that because they used individual scoring as opposed to consensus scoring. A violation of their code, it was a violation of the solicitation document, and that's the first basis of our protest that we're going to go through the evidence that exists in the record. The second basis for our bid protest is that the county evaluators failed to evaluate consistent with the solicitation, focusing on Mr. Tavernari. I apologize if I mispronounce his last name. And in that instance, it's there were a number of evaluation factors, and you can see from the transcript or the recording that when evaluating Applied Sciences, Mr. Tavernari focused, at least what he stated on the record in determining his scores, only on the right of way. And that second independent basis really ties back into why it's so defective that consensus scoring wasn't used. Because if consensus scoring was used, the problem with the independent basis of our number 2 point would potentially have been mitigated or corrected. But those are 2 independent bases. But the second basis bootstraps and emphasizes the importance of the first basis of the failure to use consensus scoring. And the third basis of our protest is this whole procurement should just be resolved by giving a 4th award to Applied Sciences. And as we'll talk about as we look at the record in front of you, Ms. Mandel, yes, the county did contemplate 3 awards, but by awarding a 4th award under the facts that we're going to talk about here, essentially so close in score and a natural break, not between 3 and 4, but in 4 and 5, and in combination with the Best Care case, a recently decided case in the 1st District Court of Appeals involving a Medicaid contract that Mr. Schwartz and I had the pleasure of working on, and actually on behalf of the government in that case. The first DCA said that in a multi-award procurement, even where it is contemplated that there'll be a certain number of awards, exceeding that amount does not create any prejudicial error or competitive harm, because there's no guarantee in this procurement, especially just like there wasn't in the Medicaid procurement that Best Care brought, of any guaranteed amount of work. So while yes, there might be less work for the 3 awardees, that's not recognizable under law as an error in a multi-award procurement where there's no guarantee of any work. So those are our three issues that we'll address today and this morning. The failure to use consensus scoring, the improper evaluation, and the failure to make a 4th award. Let's talk a little bit about, but I know that you've had chances to review the documents, but give a little bit of background to put it in context. And again, this is all from materials in the record, predominantly the solicitation document, but this was a multiple award procurement for miscellaneous professional services, specifically the stormwater modeling. The procurement was conducted pursuant to the Competitive Consultants Negotiations Act, CCNA. And that's significant here for really 2 reasons. A, because it's the incumbent contract that applied has been working on, and I've explained to you in the record about their past performance that is clear. But as we'll see, the county's procurement code has special direction as to how you evaluate and score in a CCNA procurement that wasn't followed here. And as I said when I was addressing our 3rd issue in this introduction, that there was the folks who get contracts are not guaranteed any work. The county will issue work orders for the awardees to provide engineering resources, technical support for watershed modeling updates, development review, and other stormwater related services. But importantly, and this goes to our 3rd reason for you to sustain the protest, there's no guarantee of minimum of work, and that's why a 4th award is appropriate here. So let's go into the 3 issues and look at the record, Ms. Mandel, that's before you. Let's focus on the county's use of individual scoring rather than consensus scoring. And as I said, the significance about this issue is it's a de novo issue. This is an issue not did they get close to doing consensus scoring, it's did they do consensus scoring. And I think it's important for us when we look through the record, calling something consensus scoring, which clearly the county did. This is not a situation where the county says we didn't do consensus scoring because there wasn't an appropriate time or it wasn't appropriate in the situation. It's their position is they did do consensus scoring. But what we'll see from the record before you, Ms. Mandel, is that they did not. If I may, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to make references to the consolidated appendix that we provided. And I'll give the page number first for those of you who either have printed it out or have it on your own screens. But I'm going to take us to page 270, which is our attachment 10. It's the county's procurement procedures manual. And I'm going to bring that up, if I may, here. See if I bring up the right screen. And am I sharing, is it say consensus and individual scoring? Yes, they are. I can see it in a small part. So this is page 270 of our attachments, the consolidated record. And this is within the CCNA section. That's why it's important, like I said, to look at the CCNA. And here's how we're going to do the competitive selection. And that's what was being done here. There's 2 ways that the county can do scoring. The first is consensus, and the second is individual scoring. And what the manual says is consensus will be used. And that's in fact why the county purports to have used it in this procurement. And the consensus is only not to be used, and you revert to individual scoring. So even if you decide to use consensus because you deem it appropriate, which the county has, there's no dispute as to that, you have to stick with consensus unless it's within a reasonable time frame. You can't reach consensus. Then you go to individual scoring. Now, what is individual scoring? Individual scoring is essentially defined in this manual. What individual score is you score it by yourself and they're averaged, meaning you take the three, in this situation, 3 evaluators, they give their individual scores and they're averaged. That's exactly what happened in this case. There was no attempt, whether it was purposefully or whether it was inadvertent, there was no attempt to reach any consensus. As we'll go through, but just a preview, there was almost 5 hours of oral presentations. It was a long day, and the evaluators did talk about their scores, and we'll go through that on the record a little bit. And then they averaged them. That's the exact definition as we see in the procurement manual as what individual scoring is. Now, we'll get into this further, but what the position of the county and the intervener is, no, we did consensus because the evaluators did the averaging themselves. That's a form over substance. The procurement ran this solicitation and ran this evaluation, but that reminds me of folks putting in, something in a header, but the body is completely different. It doesn't transform what the county did here. And as we saw in the code, individual scoring is when you score individually and average. Consensus scoring is much different. I think we all understand what consensus scoring is. And we're going to see an example of that in the record that we provided, one supplemental transcript that we did over an audio tape that we provided and in the previous iteration of these hearings just before, Ms. Mandel, you admitted. But consensus is where there's a back and forth between the evaluators discussing not only the basis of what their score was, but challenging, trying to reach that group decision rather than just justifying your own score and then averaging. In essence, a consensus is a reasoned decision-making process. And it takes longer and it's harder. That's why you see in the procurement manual that it says, even when you deem it appropriate, at some point in time, if a consensus cannot be reached, you can go back to simply take the individual scores and average them. But if the county's position and the intervener's position here that they did consensus because they chose to do averaging, that in essence is an exception that would swallow the whole meaning of consensus scoring, because that's the exact same process that you use in individual scoring. That might be the appropriate thing if you can't get to a consensus. That's what the code says. That's what the manual says, excuse me. I'm going to share my screen again. I should have kept that on and just went to the right page. I'm going to go to page 27, which was the memo that invited people to the final scoring here. This was the memo sent to the shortlisted firms. There were 6 shortlisted firms. They were going to be given 45 minutes plus 15 minutes for 30 minutes for their presentation, 15 minutes for questions and answers, and then a 15-minute transition time. And we had six companies presenting. It appears they went in alphabetical order. We've moved on to page 28 of the consolidated record. Applied had, which, recency and latency, usually going first is helpful, but probably not when it's a 5-hour oral presentation and you get scored after the end of 5 hours. But I bring this up, for two reasons, Ms. Mandel. To one, see how long of a day this was going to be. And, it's a thankless task to be on an evaluation committee. All the members have real other job responsibilities. So I feel for folks and when they volunteer and they read these proposals, they listened to the presentations. And here's where you can see in 28 where the county showed that they had deemed it appropriate. So they deemed it appropriate to use consensus scoring, and they said that it was going to occur. So what happened during the meeting? And this is attachment 3, just for the record, this page 27 and 28. So during the meeting itself, which is attachment 12, that starts at approximately page 384 of our consolidated, and I'll take us there in a moment. But during the day, like I said, they did the oral presentations, they had questions, and that starts on page 384. I'll bring it up here now. Attachment 12. And this is what the county did. I don't know if there's an automated program or not, but it looks to be a transcript that either is matched up with the time or that's how the county prepared it. We also have the audio in the record. I'm not going to bother. I am going to show an audio clip, but I'm going to show it from the other procurement, not from this procurement, because this has an official transcript. In the supplemental evidence that we submitted, we did an informal transcript that you can use, but we have entered into the record the actual audio itself for you to have for the record. So 384, the process starts, and then it goes on for nearly 200 pages, and then the scoring begins essentially on page 517 of the accumulated record. And you can see there, they say goodbye to the last presenters, and then they begin their evaluation, recognizing that it's been a very long day. And if the hearing master reads the transcript, you can see they talk a little bit about how this, it's a long day. They've had longer sometimes, and they've had shorter sometimes. But you can see from the time and the agenda that they've been at it for at least nearly 5 hours. And I want to take us to page 531. And you can read through this. It's only another 14 pages, and you can listen to the tape. But what you see, and I'm going to point to one instance, what you clearly see is each evaluator gives a brief summary of why they reached the scores in each of the 3 categories. There were 3 categories for the selection here. And again, remember, this is a public meeting, just like this meeting today. And best practices is to document the rationale for your scoring. And so they gave a very brief introduction. The point is, when you read through that, that is not consensus, though. Consensus is, as we've talked about, deliberation, back and forth. What we see the evaluators do here is the alternative process, individual scoring, and the mere fact that they say their scores out loud and they give some justification for it does not turn it into consensus. I want to point out on 531, and this is just one example of what was done, and it's consistent for all 6 of the. If you went and read all of the 14 or 15 pages of the scoring, or you listened to that 15, 20 minutes of the last part of the meeting, this process was consistently, and I'm gonna point our attention to the notation where we're at 54109. And this is essentially, again, after they give their brief rationale, it goes right into a summary. So the last score I have here for David, I have 10, 10, 9, and then I have 10 9s and 9.4, 9.6, 9.6. So the total is 85.6, and the average score is 28.53. Now, if you read through the remainder, that's all that was done, not in dispute. Reading out our individual scores and averaging them. There was no attempt to do any deliberation back and forth. Merely, here's why I scored, then they simply average them. And the fact that it may have been done at times by the evaluators as opposed to a procurement official. And again, this might have been one of the, they're doing it by Zoom, they're not in person, so I don't know why, but again, that's form over substance. If we go back to page 270, you'll see of that procurement manual on the record, that is individual scoring that gets averaged. What I want to do now, Ms. Mandel, is bring up the recording, and we also had sent in, like I said, the informal transcript, I'll call it, and we had loaded that to the FTP site after putting the record, the joint appendix. But this is and we had presented after we, it's a public record, you can pull others, but this is the one that the hearing master accepted. It was for professional design services for flow diversion from Falkenberg to Valrico. And I'm actually going to beg everyone's indulgence, and I'm going to play, because it'll be just as quick to just play the first 7 minutes, and I'm going to stop it once or twice to discuss it. But I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to go back to, give me a second, because I know there's a feature when you share your screen to optimize it for audio. So let me do this. I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I have to select that again.
Yes, sir. If you click on the share button on the top left side, there'll be a drop down, and you could click on optimize for motion and video, and on the right side, and that'll pop up to share your computer audio as well.
Correct. So I practiced that yesterday. So I'm going to start the tape and then I'll stop it to make sure everyone can hear it good enough. So here I'm going to stop it. Again, this is the recording of the February 6, 2020 Evaluation Committee meeting. This is we're going to see what consensus scoring looks like.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michelle Maitland. I'm a senior procurement analyst assigned to this solicitation. We're here on February 6th for the evaluation committee meeting for RPS 19424, engineering services for flow diversion from Falkenberg to Valrico AWTP. This meeting is being recorded. We do have consultants here. If you could, you're very welcome to listen, but please, you have to keep your comments till later. If you do have any comments, we still have a cone of silence on this solicitation, so please make sure they come through me. The proposals will not be available for you all to peruse until 30 days after the close date. If the evaluation committee could introduce yourselves.
Brad Warholic, Public Utilities.
Colin Tyner, Public Utilities.
Catherine McCall, Public Utilities.
Pete Hardy, Public Utilities.
There is a sign-in sheet going around, so if you guys can sign in. Evaluation committee, did everyone sign your disclosure form?
Yeah.
Yes. And did each of you have a chance to review the proposals?
Yes.
Okay. This time I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Okay.
I'm going to stop it for a second. I'm assuming that the volume was acceptable. I didn't see anyone chime in. But I'm going to stop it for a second.
Able to hear it, just so you know, as I was able to hear it, and I want to make sure everybody else was able to hear it. Mando.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. I appreciate that. So
Yeah. I just put that I was listening to the tape. I couldn't hear it enough to be able to transcribe it.
Sure, Ms. Frayne, that's a court reporter just for those. What we can do is we have an exhibit that has a informal transcription. So after the meeting, should this be typed, we'll send you a copy of that, and then you can re-listen to we can send you the audio to listen again to on your own computer, and it'll be better. I'm only going to play about another 6 minutes. And I'm stopping it there for two reasons. One, I didn't need that first minute, but I wanted to make sure it could be heard, and it probably would have taken me a minute to get to this first spot. But the next 2 minutes that we're going to listen to is an example of what was done in our procurement. The next 2 minutes is individual scoring. And so the next 2 minutes is we're at 1 minute and 13 on the recording, and we're going to go to 3:40, and that is the beginning of scoring, which is clearly individuals. The first part, individual scoring, where you say what you scored and you give some reason. So let's listen for 2 minutes and compare. That's exactly what was done initially in our case.
I figured what we'll do is we'll go off of the 5 criteria. So what we'll start with is the ability of the firm and its professional personnel. This is out of a 0 to 35 scale. So, and I figured we start alphabetical order, so AECOM to Wright Pierce. And we'll just go around the room with, whatever your score was and your justification for that score. So the first item, I guess I'll start with AECOM. I gave them a score of 13. I felt like they...
Let me stop for a second, because I think a word was used that's real important. Justification for your score. And that's what the evaluators did properly in our procurement. At least they gave their justification. But again, that's not consensus. That's the justification for individual score. Let me hit play again. I'm at 151 on the recording.
They were missing some of the personnel with the public outreach. They were qualified, but they were missing some departments of the overall project. So I guess we can go in clockwise order. Kelly, if you want to go.
I give them a higher score, but one of the things that I don't know if we're supposed to talk about this, but one of the things that I deducted points was they had a person that was claiming to have been associated with a certain project that was not a part of that project, because that person worked on the project, so they know they were a part of it, but they claimed they were part of it. So I gave them a score of 14.
I don't know anything about that, but I went through and listed all of the things that I thought were supposed to be covered for the project, and quite frankly, based on the resumes, I thought that they had just about everything covered. There were 2 areas where they had people that were qualified to do it but hadn't specifically called out someone specially doing, like the odor control. So I gave them 28.
I gave AECOM a 32, based on my knowledge of the guy that they assigned, not as the project manager, but as the principal designer, a guy named Tim Curran, who I've known for a long time, and know he's been a consistent performer ever since I've known him.
Okay. Move on to,
So I want to stop it there, and actually even going to move it back a touch. And this is why I'm going to play it just to get to that point, and I'm going to talk over it as it's going. I apologize for
I
that.
gave AECom a 32.
I'm going to
based
talk
on
over it
my
for a
knowledge of,
second
the
because
guy that they assigned, not as the
what
project
I'm going to
manager,
stop it at
as the principal
is the
designer.
point where
Tim Curran,
they were
who I've
about
known
to
for a long time.
do individual scoring, and then someone realized
consistent
this. And so I'm going to stop it for a second. So in the next 2 seconds, they're about to go to the next company and talk about the scores or next area. And then somebody realizes, wait a second, we were supposed to reach consensus. And so this first 3 minutes and 40 seconds, besides the intro, that's what happened in this case. And they, again, whether inadvertently or purposefully, skipped over trying to reach consensus in our case. But let's listen to the next, essentially 4 minutes, almost exactly, where they try to reach and do reach consensus.
Ever since I've known him.
okay. Move on to, oh, okay. So we had 32, 28, 14, and 13?
So they announced their scores to each other to try and see, hey, where are we at? Let's see what gap we have. And again, they do that to trying to see, what can we do to come to a unitary score, a deliberative decision.
I don't really have a problem with changing it. I don't know that it is a penalty. That's why I asked the question. I mean, just because they weren't all part of the project, but they claim to be part of the project. I mean, I think they had a great team. They had a lot of firepower as far as their experience and everything. But I just didn't know what to do with the person that is the top person in the proposal. They're not really, they're supposed to be somewhat transparent in what they're talking about, and when they don't say that, then I don't know. I've never had to deal with that. So I mean, I don't have a problem going up to the original score that I had of 24, but then I took a 10-point penalty because, like I said, one of their lead persons was not the lead person they said they were.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem changing it to 24 or whatever you want to go with, but that was just my recollection of how I came up with that.
You didn't feel that they had some areas covered.
So my concern was the public outreach. I don't
Okay.
believe I saw anyone listed for public outreach, and I feel like that's going to be part of the overall project. Is
No, that is important, and I was very sure they had.
Just hire Valeria Cuidad Real like everybody else did.
well, that's why I don't recall seeing that.
Oh, I don't have, that was the one thing I didn't. I thought that they may have had someone in-house that was specialized in public outreach.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might have mentioned some like public involvement,
Yes.
but I was concerned about the degree of which they were going to, because of this being depending. We're going to be in a highly.
Right. I didn't pay attention to that one, in that I saw that they had somebody assigned to the public involvement. But yes, it's,
So that was my just reasoning for where I had it. Like with Kelly, is I brought it down because of that. But besides that aspect, I was
I'd just like to point out that we got an hour and a half.
I know.
I'm going to stop there for a second because consensus takes longer. And look what, to them, they already realized, wait a second, we have to balance this, right? and someone says, wait a second, we've got a lot more to do. And that's what the code says. I keep saying code, I apologize, the manual. If you don't have time, then you can go to it, but you still got to try it first. So I think that's an important point to recognize.
And we got to go through 9 firms.
That's what, there's like 45
So we
different
probably
numbers
should have a
here.
time limit on our discussion.
So I mean, Kelly, you said you were at 24 and.
Yeah, that was my original score, and I was just like juggling around, what do I do with it? You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that it's a penalty, it doesn't really talk to that in any of our services about, well, if you got a person in there, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people maybe embellish their experience with other projects a little more than what they're really involved with, but I don't know that that's a penalty. So I wrote 24, but then I put next to it, and on the score sheet I had 24, but then I put, should I deduct 10 points to the person?
So then do we want to
I
just,
don't have a problem, going up. They got a strong team.
I was gonna say, do we want to do something around 27 or?
I think that the 21 to 27 range, because of your concern, they do have a lot of the experience and qualifications. It says that all the necessary disciplines, but I understand your concern. You feel that this was a discipline they should have.
Yeah, but we can go with 27, Pete, if you're okay with that.
Okay, that's kind of going to be how I'm going to benchmark all the rest of my,
Let me stop there, because I think this is another factor that you get through consensus scoring that was lacking in this present procurement. You heard that evaluator. Well, if that's going to be our consensus, that'll be my benchmark. And why is that so significant? Because, especially when you're assigning point scores, people have the tendency to maybe use different scales. And so one person's scale alone can determine essentially the outcome. And in essence, that's what happened here to apply, because one person's scale, as how they scaled the merit of other proposers, made the ultimate difference. And we'll see that importantly. And again, we're not accusing anyone of purposely not doing consensus, but it was failed to be done. And that's important. We've seen the 3 things here that make consensus. It's deliberative, there's give and take, and it sets a benchmark, not just for an individual evaluator, but it sets a benchmark so all of the evaluators are essentially scoring, so their scores are consistent with their rankings. So you get really the consensus best value, which didn't happen here. So I'm just going to finish out the next 10 seconds, I believe.
Okay.
rankings, I guess.
Okay. So then American structure.
And then they go to the next one. So let me the actual scores. Let me turn this around so you can see it. Actually, that's not the page I really wanted, but let me show it to you. We'll come back to this later, but here's ends up the scores that we have, and just to put it in context, here's your awardees. The highest score was 2853. Then next was 2847. Then the third was Atkins, 2813, and then applied 0.2 below Atkins. But I wanted to show you, I've got the...
Sorry to interrupt. Can you tell me what page you're on?
Yeah, that is page 535. But what I really want to show you is page 5. Let me find the page number of this page. 537. This is the page that I want to demonstrate of the significance. This is a document that, the last document that we looked at was the summary. This is the individual evaluator scores for individual items. And this, I'm showing you this to illustrate what happens when you don't do consensus and you don't have the same type of benchmarking. And so here we have for applied sciences, the 3 evaluators, and it's not so much the scores that's significant, it's the benchmarking. Down here, if you look at the scores and then you compare Ms. Gal's scores across the board, she had applied as the number 2 most qualified vendor. Mr. Glicksberg had applied as the number 1, but Mr. Tavanieri had them as number 6. And as we've put in our protest, and I think as we'll hear from them when they talk about their experience, the folks who are more familiar with Applied, Ms. Gow and Mr. Glicksberg, had a better understanding, let alone our allegation point number 2 that Mr. Tavanieri's review was more limited to right-of-way. But this is where it's significant. Mr. Tavanieri rated us the worst vendor in this shortlisting of 6, the worst, where everyone else had us either the best or the second best. And again, a lack of consensus process to give you that benchmarking that would have given the ability to fix that. And what's also significant, it's not that only that Mr. Tavanieri had us the worst, and all the other groupings, there's at most there's a benchmarking difference of 1 or 2 places. You see it, 231, 321, 123, 342, 445. So the fact that the only one stands out where there's a clear discriminator shows that something was happening there. And again, this is not to our point 2 argument. This is to the importance of benchmarking and deliberation. In preparing for our presentation today, Mr. Raj, we were trying to come up with what is the, what could we analogize to? What would all of us, even though he's a professional engineer, what could we analogize this to? And he came up with this example, I'm going to steal it, the jury process. In the jury process, you deliberate. The movie 12 Angry Men comes to mind, and you compare and you benchmark and you try to reach a consensus. To average, imagine if juries just averaged, someone scores a 0, someone scores a 1, and someone scores much higher, and that one juror could make someone guilty by their benchmarking, their score, because they didn't have the chance to hear from others and have the opportunity to compare and contrast like the manual provides for, and like what we heard in that other procurement. And so here we've got a situation where the lack of consensus, not following the manual, was more prejudicial because of the closeness of the scores, the quality of the vendors, and the lack of this benchmarking. We cite in our protest a federal case, a bid protest case from the Court of Federal Claims that explains why individual scoring that then you average is not consensus, because it's a mathematical formula that doesn't take into considerations the true qualities and measures of the procurement. It's easier. It's what you do maybe when you run out of time, but the county's manual requires you to do it unless you can't. And clearly here the county could. And so what happened by using individual scoring with averaging, one evaluator's score who had us the worst caused us to come in just out of the top three. That's a true lack of consensus process. That's why the protesters should be stained on that base. The easiest way to resolve that, because of the closeness, and we'll talk about this later, is to just go ahead and give the fourth award. But other than that, send it back to the three evaluators to do a true consensus scoring rather than the individual scoring with averaging that they did. I'll turn off my screen sharing here. Let's go to the second point now, moving off of the error of using individual scoring with averaging as it's defined instead of consensus, and go to the second point, which is essentially Mr. Tavaneri's over-reliance on his right-of-way analysis. And we're not just making this up. If you go to the transcript in the record, when you look at the applied sciences scores, it's on the joint consolidated record. It starts at page 168. It's attachment 12. The audio begins at 5 hours, 12 minutes, and 37. And you see Mr. Tavaneri, who doesn't have the personal experience with applied, talks about the right-of-way experience. Right-of-way experience was one component of this procurement, but the justification that Mr. Tavaneri score for applied, as he scored them the worst, that's what he articulated. Now, we've seen that he submitted an email and he said, in my mind, I took everything into consideration, but that's an after-the-fact statement that should be given less due diligence than the record. And in the record itself, we have a discussion that focuses on only the right of way. And not only is that too narrow of a review, but it was a double dipping, because it should have only affected the one of these categories, the ability category. Instead, that focus was to all three. So not only was it too narrow of a focus, but it was amplified. And then, like I said in our first argument, made the failure to use consensus scoring even worse. So it's a bootstrap, it's an independent basis and a bootstrap. We supplemented the record and to demonstrate that not only is this solicitation, the right of way, just one factor of where the work's going to be. Some of it's in the right of way and some is on private property, but there's a new procurement. In fact, I think Mr. Tavaneri can tell us it's the solicitation, the meeting I think is on Monday. And we've supplemented the record with this. It's RPS 20353 for roadway, stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain work, focusing on right-of-way work, the type of work that Mr. Tavaneri articulated in describing his decision to score applied the worst of the six, and outside of the reasonable range of what we saw of the two other evaluators with more direct experience of applied. It is, in the end, on issue number 2, it's our obligation to point out in the record where there's arbitrary conduct. And what we are describing is in the transcript, in the recording, we've given you the point to review on your own, Ms. Mandel, at your leisure after the hearing. And we don't have to prove that, but for that, the scoring would have been different. We need to show to you that it was conduct inconsistent with the solicitation, and clearly the scoring reflects the materiality of it, let alone the bootstrapping onto it as to our first issue, the importance of failing to use consensus. The evaluation in issue number 2 clearly shows that it doesn't, the scores are not consistent with Applied's presentation, and the protest should be sustained on that basis. And part of the remand, if the issue 2 is the only issue, again, Ms. Mandel, you should award her a 4th award, or at least remand back to rescore properly. Our last issue. Our last issue is the number of awards. As I said in the opening of our presentation today, the third basis of our protest is the failure of the county to award 4 awards. And we raise that for really 2 reasons. One is it's a solution for the hearing master to grant a remedy here. Even if you believe counts 1, I'll call them counts 1 and counts 2 have merit, recommend just a 4th award, save the county the time and effort of going back and rescoring. Or independently, just because under the totality of circumstances in the record, independently, 4 awards should be made. And why is that? Are we making that up out of thin air? No, I'm going to take you to page 518 of the consolidated record. I guess, did I stop sharing my screen? Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm showing 518 of the consolidated record that we put together. And I'll point your attention to 50632. So this is at the beginning of them talking about how they're going to score and select. And the evaluators have a discussion. They say, according to the article, well, let me step back. They say, and it's interesting here, you can see we can make the consent score at the end. So they recognizes that they were supposed to do consent scoring, but we didn't see any of that deliberative process as we went through. We saw a announce, justify, and average, which is individual scoring. So here's where this comes from. We're not making this up. They say, according to the article, it's 3, the article they're referring to the solicitation, but the evaluators were advised, because it says they said, if the 4th one is very close, they do allow for a 4th this time. So the evaluators had the authority, as they discussed, to award 4. They announced it on the record at a public meeting, and I won't take us back to the screenshot. It's on, I think it was page 35 or 36 or 34, where you saw the scores. But here, I think actually it's 31, 32. It's again. There you see it. You have there Applied being less than 0.2 away from the 3rd, Atkins, and less than a point away from the number 1, from Wood at 28.53. But then dropping down, the gap gets bigger to DRMP. So we have the evaluators on the record saying they could do a 4th. We've provided you with one of the more recent public procurement cases in an appellate court in Florida, the Best Care decision, where the courts say it is not error in a multiple award procurement to do that. We have a natural break here, and it's a perfect remedy, either independently or because of the other independent bases of our protest, the use of individual scoring rather than consensus, and the improper emphasis by Mr. Tavaneri that led to the scoring of us as the worst proposal in contrast to the other two evaluators. So in conclusion, Ms. Mandel, 3 bases of protest, all of them independent, but all also tied together that I think make one individually more powerful than them alone. And that is by there being a too narrow scope and a unique gap of one evaluator ranking us the worst, the others first and second, shows not only the independent error of that, but the failure, the resulting failure of not using consensus, and the factual statement on the record from the evaluators that they had the authority to do 4, even though they contemplated 3, and the case law that supports it. So the county erred as a matter of law on not doing consensus. They scored arbitrarily and capriciously by seeing that that score ended up as the worst, and on the record, the only justification being an analysis of the right of way, and any other justification in a after the fact email or testimony today should be given less credence than what was said on the record. And then finally, the hearing master's ability to follow the direction of the evaluators during the meeting that they had the authority to award for those reasons, independently and together, we recommend and demand that you must sustain the protest. Mr. Araj is here. I believe that everything that I articulated is in the record, especially as to applied experience. But if any of that is disputed, we certainly can square him in and have him confirm it. But at this time, we thank you for the opportunity to be heard, the ability to procure things competitively under CCNA is a gift because it's important to ensure the open and fair and competitive process, and the ability to challenge the government's decisions in a proceeding like this is much appreciated. Your time and attention, including giving us an opportunity to ensure that we all were safe by reconvening this meeting essentially virtually for all the participants. We appreciate it. Applied is very glad to be a contractor for the county. It brings this proceeding with much hesitancy. No one likes to challenge the decisions of their clients, but we believe we've established the standard for the sustaining of the protest, and we look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations. Thank you very much.
Goldstein, before we end this part of the presentation, first let me make sure that there is, you didn't really present any witnesses, so there wouldn't really be an opportunity for cross-examination unless somebody wants to make some request for that in terms of your client being with you. It's hard to cross-examine, however, when you haven't actually presented that testimony. The 2 questions I have for you are, one, you'd mentioned a case relating to one that you just recently did relating to having a 4th award in a multi-award situation. I wanted to make sure that was either part of my packet, or if it's not, if you could provide me with that case or at least with the the citation so that I can look that up.
Yes, I'm fairly confident cited in our bid protest appeal. It's a first DCA case, but during the rest of today, we'll confirm that. And I can have Mr. Schwartz email to all the participants a copy for everyone to take a look at. In addition to, like I said, I believe it's already cited, but we'll distribute that.
The second question I have for you, and I'm going to have the same question for all the parties, including the intervener. In terms of this definition of consensus scoring versus individual scoring, are there any either case law sites as it relates to what that, I understand you've put into the record what's occurred here and what's occurred in another case, but is there any general consensus, I use that term lightly, across the state as to what the specific difference is and between consensus scoring and individual scoring? Is there any case law citation? Is there any generally accepted terminology as part of procurement processes, either state or federal? I'm just, what I would like to see is that I don't know that there's a specific definition within a definition section in this procurement manual. Is there some guidance that's generally accepted as to how that process is supposed to look through this either state of Florida or through some federal procurement processes?
Yes, thank you, Adele. If I may answer it first, and again, this is Joe Goldston.
Everybody. So I just, that to me is a relevant part of what this bid challenge is. And that is a question that I have, would like to have some information on from all of you. Thank you.
So I'm going to answer it this way. I think there's essentially two places where that's answered. Let me say this first. In Florida generally, to be frank, even though I believe consensus, especially in what I call a qualifications-based procurement, like a CCNA, where it's so important because you don't look at price until you select the vendor, then you negotiate a fair and reasonable price. That's different than most normal procurements where price is part of the decision process. So that's why I believe it's a best practice in Florida to use consensus. And I think that is recognized. And so I'll answer your question. The first place where I think it is defined is in the county's procurement manual. And it's on page 70. It's still up the screen. And it's defined by contrasting it with what individual scoring is. And clearly what we see with individual scoring is you combine those individual scores and you average. There is no case law in Florida that I'm aware of. But what in our protest appeal, we do cite cases from the Court of Federal Claims and the General Accountability Office that go into this issue. And the one case that that I think is the best case is the case, it's called the Beta Analytics International. It's a Court of Federal Claims in a bid protest. And they're talking about why averaging is not the end result of a reasoned decision-making process. And I think you just have to, what we say a lot of times if this was a jury trial, what we say to jurors, use your common sense. Consensus, it's got a very common term to it. It's a group of people trying to come to what I call a unitary decision, as opposed to a group of people coming to separate decisions and then averaging them. That's not reason. That's not a consensus. That's the end result. But so I point you to their own manual and the cases cited in our written materials, and most importantly, the Beta Analytics case, to answer your question.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'd like to take a 5-minute break and then we will move on to the next presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have everybody on the line? We're ready to proceed. I'll ask the intervener, Adkins, to go ahead and give their presentation. You do have 2 hours as well.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mendel, and may it please the hearing master. I will not be lengthy in any way, as I said previously in submissions to all the parties and to the hearing master. All of Atkins' positions have really been articulated in their September 17th, 2020 intervention package. And that's, I believe, at Exhibit 16, pages 540 to 591. But I did want to briefly address a couple of issues. And by the way, the notice of intervention does address each and every one of the three bases for applied sciences protest. Again, just briefly, I wanted to touch upon, let's talk first about basis one, which is the consensus versus individual scoring. And I agree with Mr. Goldstein that we should look to the procurement manual as to the quote unquote definition of what consensus scoring is. I think what we've heard this morning is a lot of interpretation, attorney interpretation and attorney argument about what that evaluation committee did during those 40 minutes of deliberations. And then as a comparative analysis, a lot of interpretation relating to the RPS, I think it was 20353 evaluation committee scoring. At the end of the day, what the record clearly shows is that almost 40 minutes of deliberative process was undertaken with the committee members, the three committee members. They had a deliberation where they discussed their feelings about each of the presentations. While individual scoring was discussed during those 40 minutes of deliberations, there is nothing in the record that indicates that discussing individual scoring creates a situation where that is no longer consensus scoring. And one of the other important issues I think that is also in the record, I think there was documentation provided by the county that indicates that if you look at the page 270, Exhibit 10, under individual scoring, one of the aspects of that definition is that the score sheets will be submitted to procurement services. If you look at Exhibit 18 to the record, page 594 of the combined package, Mr. Chris of the county indicates that those score sheets were not submitted to procurement services. So by definition, individual scoring was not implemented in this particular case. I don't think there's any dispute that the discussion of the individual scores from the evaluation committee was part of the deliberations. But there's nothing in this record that indicates that individual scoring was used versus consensus scoring. It's very clear from the record that nearly 40 minutes was discussed about the scoring and the presentations of each and every one of the six firms. And I'll also say this, the RPS 20353, I believe that discussion is about an hour and 3 minutes, just about 20 minutes longer than the deliberations that were undertaken in this case. And I just wanted to bring that to the hearing master's attention. Again, our points are articulated pretty clearly in our September 16th notice of intervention. I did want to address basis 3 as well of the applied sciences protest. And this is related to the fact that the county should make a fourth award and has the discretion to do so. As stated in our notice of intervention package, it's clear from the procurement that Hillsborough County intended to select 3 firms. And in fact, at section 2.3, it says clearly that the county may select as many as 3 qualified professionals for award of this contract. Not 3 or more, not 4, not 5, but as many as 3. So I think one of the points that I'd like the hearing master to, at least when she's doing her deliberations and her decision-making here, to make sure that she addresses that issue as well. Increasing the number of awards to 4 here would go against the plain language of the procurement and the RPS itself, and it would modify it and improperly modify it and run afoul of the RPS's plain language and intent. And again, as I said, I was going to be very, very brief, and I appreciate everyone's indulgence, but the rest and remainder of Adkins' position is memorialized in our September 17th package, which I believe is at Exhibit 16, and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did answer the question that I had asked as it relates to your position on where the definition of consensus versus individual scoring. You didn't present any testimony, so there would be no opportunity for cross-examination. And unless there's any additional questions, we'll move on to the county's presentation. And you have 2 hours.
Thank you, Ms. Mendel. Ken Poe for Hillsborough County. Just to kind of lay out how we intend to present our case is I'm going to call the Director of Procurement, Scott Stromer. Then I'm going to call 2 individuals who were actually on the committee, G. Gal and also Marcelo Tavaneri. I'd like to start with calling Scott Stromer, and I think that he's already been sworn. Mr. Stromer, would you state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Scott Stromer, and I'm the Director of Procurement for Hillsborough County.
Okay. How long have you been employed with Hillsborough County?
Approximately 6 years.
Okay. And how long have you been the director?
6 years.
6 years, okay. Tell us a little bit about your educational background.
So I've got a bachelor's degree in business management. I've been leading procurement programs. I was the person agent in Alliance, Nebraska, the city of Alliance, for 7 years. After that, I was the director of purchasing for
Hold on a second, Mr. Stromer. Mr.
Yes.
Stromer, I'm sorry. Can you start? You said I've got a bachelor's degree.
in business management.
Okay, and start right after that.
Okay. So my work experience is as a person agent for the city of Alliance in Nebraska for 7 years. After that, as the director of purchasing for Pasco County for nearly 17 years. And now with Hillsborough County as the director of procurement for nearly 6 years. I've also was a master instructor for the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing and Procurement.
The National what?
Years. National Institute of Governmental Purchasing.
Yeah, if you could just, it's sometimes it doesn't come in real clear. Sorry.
Okay, very well, thank you. So.
Okay, thank you. I'd like you to talk a little bit about this process. First of all, when the county bid this project, how many firms did it call for?
So the solicitation was very clear. It called that the county would award up to 3 firms for this work.
Okay. Now there's been some suggestion that it could have been 4. Why is it 3 and not 4?
That was the original request from the department, and that's what's in the document.
Okay. Would it go against the county's procurement process to award an extra firm as opposed to the original 3 that was intended?
Yes. We need to do exactly what we said we were going to do, and so that's why we're doing it.
Okay. If you could, for us, could you lay out just generally how the procurement process works in Hillsborough County?
So in this case, this process is really governed by Section 287.055, which under the Florida statutes, which is commonly known as the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, or CCNA. CCNA actually prescribes the process of qualification-based selection for professional services, whereby firms are selected based on their qualifications and ability, not low price. Generally, agencies are required to comply with a 4-step process when entering into continuing or fixed-term contracts for professional services in Florida. And those steps are really the public announcement of the work, the qualifications-based selection of the professional firms, the arm's length negotiations with the most qualified firms, and then the execution of the contracts. In this case, the county followed that process, and the Attending Evaluation Committee followed that process, and that's where we are right now.
Could you explain briefly the difference between individual scoring and consensus scoring?
Yeah, so the procedures manual is very, very clear. So consensus scoring, in the plain language, I'll just simply read it because that's what we did. CCNA Evaluation Committee will evaluate CCNA submittals using consensus scoring when deemed appropriate. In the event consensus scoring cannot be reached within a reasonable time frame, the individual scoring method may be used. And then it goes into individual scoring. Individual scoring is defined as when the evaluation committee evaluates and scores the submittals individually and then submits those scores to procurement services purely as a mathematical function. And then they average the scores. Now, consensus is simply the committee deliberates, they discuss, and I think it's really critical to understand that these committee members come to these meetings having already read the proposals. The proposals are the primary basis for the evaluation. They come to these meetings with some sense of their rankings, probably some sense of their scorings before they sit down. And then they go through the interviews, and as they discuss, then they're open to conversation and discussion and collaboration. And at that point, then they kind of agree on what a fair score is based on the discussions and based on their understanding, based on their work experience, on what they bring to the table as professionals. And so the difference between the two is one is purely a mathematical function. The other is really there is discussion, and they do share ideas and they share experiences, and then they arrive at an agreement of what a fair score is.
Okay. Now, originally, I called a two-step process. The first step is to review the information that is submitted by the prospective firms. Then the second is what I call an interview process, and that's where they actually interview the firms live and they make oral presentations. Let's go back to the first part of it. Originally, for the shortlist, how many were supposed to be shortlisted?
I think in this case, originally, there were 5 firms that were shortlisted, where the committee found that those were the highest ranked firms. There was concerns by one of the firms expressed. And so then ultimately the committee decided to go ahead and allow 6 firms to proceed to the next stage, which was the interviews.
Now, originally, did applied scientists make the top 5?
No, they did not.
Okay, so they were added later after they protested the decision not to put them in the top 6 or
Yes.
top 5? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So then after that, then that's when it gets, that's the process at which there is an interview, and that's when they're presenting oral testimony. Is that correct?
Yes, they did presentations to explain the proposals, really demonstrate on, that's really the opportunity for firms to really demonstrate why they should be selected.
Okay. And then at that point, there are 3 committee members, and the committee members take over from there to evaluate them. That's the interview process, essentially, with the 3 evaluators.
Yes, so it's an extension of the proposals. So the committee members individually listen, and they certainly sit as a group, but individually they're listening. And then when those conclude, and then they go into the discussions and collaboration and really then deliberate as a group and reflect on what they got out of the interviews and what they learned from the proposals.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to call next Ji Gao, who is actually one of the committee members, if that pleases the hearing master.
I don't know if at this time it would be better for us to go ahead and see if there's any cross-examination of this witness or wait till the end. It might just be a smoother transition to see if there's any cross-examination of this witness before we move on to the next witness. Guess at this point in time, is there going to be any questions that need to be asked of this witness that you could send to my attention, and we can go ahead and ask those questions?
Yes, Ms. Mandel. So I know you contemplated us emailing it to you. Would it be acceptable if I ask? I'll just say the question out loud. You can hear it and then pass it along. This way the witness can hear it also and everyone else. Whatever you prefer, but that seems to be a little bit more manageable than me taking a break and emailing it to you.
This is incredibly awkward in this context. So why don't we just go ahead and have you present what your question is, and I'll turn it over to the witness to respond, and we'll proceed that way. Do you have many questions, or is this just going to be one or two?
Just very few. It won't be more than 5 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Pope, do you have any objection to doing it this way?
No objection, ma'am.
Go ahead and ask the question. We'll do one at a time, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Stromer.
Sure. I am from those of us who've sat through public meetings, I just envision we do it kind of like through the hearing master, and before Mr. Stromer answers, if it's inappropriate, you can stop. Just say so. Mr. Stromer, thank you for your time today. Again, my name is Joe Goldstein. I wanted to make something, ask you about the CCNA to make sure the hearing master understands it like I believe you do. Under CCNA, the scoring meeting at the end, that has to be a public meeting, correct?
And instead of, just go ahead and answer that question, but let's go ahead, instead of preferencing everything, just go ahead and ask what your question is, and make it less like a like a pure cross-examination. But Mr. Stormer, if you can go ahead and answer that question.
Yes, every meeting of the evaluation committee is a public meeting.
All right. So when we look at, and again, this is through the hearing master. So when we talk about individual scoring in a CCNA procurement, individual scoring would never mean the evaluators in private scoring the proposals ahead of time, correct?
Or if you can answer that question or put whatever context you need to answer that question.
Right. So ask that one more time, because I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying.
Sure. So let's say that the county decided that, well, let me ask you this way. Has the county ever deemed it inappropriate to use consensus scoring in a CCNA procurement?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe so.
Okay. So with that understanding, that at least in your experience, it always uses consensus scoring. I just wanted to contrast with individual. Even in a CCNA procurement, individual scoring, that wouldn't be where they scored in writing outside of a public meeting.
Right. If you mean if the committee members go through the proposals and they come up with individual scores, they show up to a meeting, they simply pass those scores to somebody else to tally, arguably that would be the case, but obviously wouldn't have the benefit of the interviews, so they're already in that public meeting. But yes, if they didn't discuss, they simply shared their scores with somebody else to tabulate them, and there's no discussion, that would be individual scoring.
So is the county's point here that this was consensus because the evaluators gave some discussion about their score? Is that what makes this consensus from the county's perspective?
I think the consensus comes from that it's just simply that they had to agree, and ultimately they did agree on what the scores would be. Normally when a committee member goes through proposals and they come to these meetings, they come with some sense of the scoring that they saw individually, and then they share that and they discuss that. And that's the first sense they ever get a chance to hear or get a sense of what the other committee members are thinking or what their experience is with that firm and so forth. Now, in this case, I mean, the scores are relatively close. So if I've got scores that are 9 across the board and they pretty much all agree, okay, it's 9, and they've discussed their experience and all the rest of it, when the scores are so close, it's reasonable that there's kind of consensus out of the box, but then they take it a step further and then they have the deliberation and they discuss and they make sure that there's full understanding that they've been able to share their experiences as well. So yes, if that helps.
I appreciate that. And so you saw our presentation in the document. While the scores might have been close, you acknowledge that the relative ranking based on those scores, there was a significant difference for the three evaluators regarding applied, where the relative score was 1 versus 2 versus 6. I believe it's page 31, if you want me to bring it up.
No, I don't, because, looking at the individual scores and just looking at applied sciences. So if the scores were for the three criteria in the three committee members, the first criteria you had 9, 10, and 8.8. There's 0.2 of a difference from the 9. And then the next one is 9, 10, and 9. And then the next criteria is 9, 10, and 9. So there was 0.2 of a difference. And through those discussions, it was explained why that 8.8 was there. Again, they're very, very close.
Well, I appreciate that. I was not focusing on the actual absolute score. I was looking at how those scores, remember that page I showed where the scores of each of the evaluators, if you do it as a ranking, where it was 1, 2, and 6 for applied. Do you remember that?
I remember the page.
Okay. And so while the score was close, the county doesn't dispute the relative ranking of those scores for the three evaluators for applied it comes out to be 1, 2, and 6. You're not disputing that, correct?
I don't know that I have an opinion on it. I have to go back to it and actually look at it to see how it was determined, the 1, the 2, and the 6. Because ultimately, whatever the ultimate score was that committee, that's what I'm looking at on the overall rankings. How that's parsed out is, I would say I don't necessarily agree, because I don't know that I understand fully where that's coming from, if that makes any sense. Because I'm just looking at the scoring.
You're looking at the total score. I mean, you're looking at the scores, the relative scores.
Right.
I appreciate that.
And so,
but you have you're not, that exhibit that we showed that's in the record. All right, I don't want to belabor that point. I wanted were you able to hear the transcript of the supplemental, hear the recording of the supplemental evaluation meeting that we presented during our case in chief, that the other evaluation is 7 minutes?
right, you're talking about the other process?
Correct. The other solicitation, the other CCNA.
Right.
process, correct.
Okay.
Were you able to?
Yes,
were you able to
yes.
hear it? Okay.
Yes.
Would you agree with me that initially the evaluators gave a justification and announced their individual scores in that process, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that that same process happened? That's exactly what was done in the current solicitation. The three evaluators announced their scores and gave their justification, just like we saw in the other example, correct?
Yes, they shared their scores up front to begin the discussions, yes.
And in the other example, there was a second process where there was give and take back and forth. Do you remember listening to that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen in this solicitation, correct? When you listen to the tape or read the transcript, that didn't happen here.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. When the scores were shared, the committee members shared how they arrived at those scores. In the case of the 8.8, that evaluator explained why he had concerns and why his was a little bit lower. He did explain that. So they did share, and so they started that deliberation. So they did share their thoughts on how they arrived at their scores. Yes.
And we saw that in the other procurement, but there was a second step in the other procurement where they in the end, they moved away from their scores to reach a unitary score rather than an averaging of the evaluation members. That's the difference that happened here, correct?
There is, and there was a wider spread on that one. And I don't exactly recall the numbers, but I mean, the effect is that they eventually gravitate to the middle, effectively an average of what those scores were.
And in your procurement manual, under the consensus section, there's no discussion of using an average, correct?
No.
And in the individual scoring section, it specifically says averaging.
Yes.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Stromer. Thank you.
If I can just say one thing though, under the consensus scoring, it does not preclude the committees from being able to use different tools to come to that agreement. If through the process they end up, it happens to be an average and they all agree to that, that paragraph does not preclude that.
You've had a chance to read the transcript or listen to the audio. Was there any discussion by these three evaluators that they were going to use averaging as a method for reaching consensus? Did they ever say that out loud in any form or fashion in this procurement?
I don't recall, but.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Ms. Mandel, thank you so much. And I hope I didn't overstep the boundary of the informal process. And I appreciate the latitude.
And I know we're trying to keep this more informal, but given the context of this process and doing it on the WebEx, I'm comfortable with utilizing the process we just used, so long as we don't get to the point where we're getting into a heavy cross-examination, but asking questions to flesh out issues and having that go in that conversational way. I'm comfortable with, unless there's any objection, because I know there's a couple more witnesses that are going to be called. So why don't we proceed, Mr. Pope, to the remainder of your presentation?
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. If it please the hearing master, the county may next call G. Gao. Okay. And the hearing master, Ms. Gao, has already been sworn. Ms. Gao, would you state your name for the record and spell it, please?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My first name is Jie, J-I-E. Last name is Gao, G-A-O.
Okay. And with whom are you employed?
Hillsborough County.
And what is your role with Hillsborough County?
I am the section manager for the stormwater engineering services within the technical services division of the engineering and operations department under the Public Works Administration.
Okay. How long have you been employed with Hillsborough County?
Since May 2017. It's about 3.5 years.
And have you always been employed in the role you occupy at this time?
No. At the very beginning, I'm the stormwater modeler, which is a professional engineer. And I started my current position since January 2020.
Okay. Could you tell us your educational background, please?
Sure. I have a civil engineering degree in bachelor degree, and I also have a master degree in civil engineering and a minor in mathematics.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your employment history before you arrived at Hillsborough County.
I started with BCI, back then it's called BCI, in 2004. And later on, the company was acquired by AMAC and currently is called Wood LLC. So I worked there from 2004 until May 2017 as a water resources engineer.
Okay. And you were on the evaluation committee in this applied sciences matter, is that correct?
Yes.
How long have you been a member of the evaluation committee?
When I was a professional engineer, I was involved with evaluation committee work.
Okay. Was that before you arrived at Hillsborough County?
No.
Okay. How many times have you been on evaluation committees?
I believe 2 times.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the applied sciences case. Originally, how many firms were there total before you reduced it down to 6?
A total of 9.
Okay. And in that process, how did you reduce it down to the 6 that were ultimately shortlisted?
Each firm submitted what you call the proposal, which is involve different sections that's required in our original CCA RFP package. And then each individual member reviewed those proposals individually. And then we get together as in the meeting and come up with the scores for each firm, and then we rank them. That's how we select the top. Originally is 5 firm, and then later on, and we added number 6. So that's how we get total 6 firms.
Okay. Once you have the 6 firms, then is there another process that's like an interview process?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe that process for the hearing master, please?
Sure. For the presentation is simply, and after you get shortlisted, every firm is actually starting the same platform. In other words, there's the previous score will not be affect their presentation. So the presentation score is everybody start from 0. There's no previous score factor into the presentation. So we simply evaluate every firm based on their presentation. And then we have a criteria to follow. And that's how we sitting in evaluate all those total 6 forms for that day presentation meeting for the whole day.
Okay. As you evaluated it with the other team members on the evaluation committee, did you use individual scoring or consensus scoring?
Is the consensus score. And I want to point out here, and all the 3 members agreed on the consensus score before we proceed in how we actually come up with the consensus score. I believe in the recording, we should already mention that. And all 3 members, along with Mark Chris, which is procurement, and we were there. We talk about how we arrive at the consensus score before we proceed our scoring. So by definition, the word consensus is defined as a general agreement. So before we start the scoring process, the committee member agreed that we would use the average of each individual score to be the consensus score. And our consensus scoring process is set to prevent prolonging the scoring process, as we are all professionals and respect each other's opinions. So each individual score was determined by following the scoring criteria, which includes observation of strength and weakness in the overall presentation provided by the consultants. So that's how we start proceeding and discuss all the firm scores.
Okay. Was there a back and forth between the members on ultimately who would be the top 3?
We did not go back and forth because we agreed, and each individual score we tabulate them, and we agree use the average score because the score is so close, and we agree the average score should be the consent score. There's no back and forth afterward.
Okay. So was that an agreement between the three members?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Mandel, at this time I have no further questions.
Is there any request to cross-examine this witness?
Yes, please, Ms. Mandel.
As we stay in that more conversational tone, we'll just go ahead and allow that to be a back and forth. If it gets to a place where it's getting a little too adversarial, I will pull it back. Thank you.
Please let me know. Ms. Gal, thank you for your time today. Again, my name is Joe Goldstein, counsel for Applied. So are you saying when we either listen to the tape of the meeting for this procurement or we read through the transcript that there'll be a discussion where the evaluation committee said we will use averages to reach our consensus? That'll be in the transcript or the tape? That's your recollection?
Yes, I believe it should be at the very beginning, unless the recording wasn't on when we discussed that. And everybody in the meeting and should agree to what I just said.
Was that at the before oral presentations or after oral presentations when you had that discussion?
Is after the presentation, right before we start providing the score.
Are you done?
I'm sorry, Ms. Mandel, I was just reading, I was looking through the transcript to see if it's worth going through with Ms. Gal. If I could have 2 minutes to just see that.
And I thought you were frozen on the meeting, so I just wanted to make sure.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the record here. Well, I won't bother us going through it because Ms. Mandel can look at it. So just so we're clear, at the end of oral presentations, at the commencement of going through and doing scoring, the recording or the transcript, unless it was turned off for some reason, you're saying should reflect this discussion that you were going to use averaging to reach a consensus.
Yes, that's correct.
Let me switch to one other area. The 3 versus 4 awards. I showed at the earlier part of our case, the transcript where, and I believe it was on page 518 of the record, where there was a discussion that said, according to the article, it's 3, but they said if the 4th one is very close, they do allow for a 4th this time. My recollection, if I can remember listening to the recording, was it was a female, so I'm assuming that was you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point in time in this procurement process, you were advised that if the scoring was close, in this procurement, you could award 4 awards, correct?
The only reason I bring it up is simply because And when we have the first portion of the CCNA, which is the proposal portion, we only select the 5 consultant. At the time, when they discuss about adding 6, is simply in the discussion, the reason why they added the number 6 is because they think the score is way too close, how they add the number 6. And then at the end of a presentation, when I look at the score, and I just happened to see the score is pretty close, and I raised the question. I said, are we all going to award 4 or are we going to award 3? But this decision, I'm just raised a question, but the decision is not mine, and the procurement have to go by their rules and regulation to make the final decision.
I'm going to, if I may, just because I'm going to share the transcript so you can see it, because I wanted to ask you something specific, if I may. So I'm showing, we're on page 518 of the consolidated record, and starting here at 5:06:32, and it says, do you know how many are being selected? And then this is you speaking, correct? 3, according to the article, it's 3. You're referring to the solicitation document says may award 3, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
But then you say, but they said if so wasn't they, who was they? Procurement, right? Telling you that before.
The reason I use the word they, and simply because at the time when they added 6, and that's one part of the reason, and they allowed the 6, and that's how I assume. So this is just part of me speaking, and I may use the word just to reference, and that just is reference to the fact. It's not really reference to a day to who, whatever.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to ask you these additional questions. Thank you, Ms. Mandel. Nothing further.
Ms. Mandel, if it please the hearing master, I'd call the county's next witness.
Thank you.
At this time, Hillsborough County calls Marcelo Tavaneri. Good morning, Mr. Tavaneri. Would you state your name and spell it for the record, please?
Yes, Marcelo Tavaneri, MarcelloTavernari.
Okay, and with whom are you employed?
Hillsborough County.
In what role or capacity?
I'm a section manager of our infrastructure section.
Okay. How long have you worked for Hillsborough County?
I started here in 2018 of January.
Okay. And have you always been employed in your present role?
Over the infrastructure section, yes.
Okay. Could you explain a little bit about your job title or what it is that you do?
I am responsible as a manager over Hillsborough County's paving program and our bridge program, also our stormwater culvert replacement program and our stormwater pump station program, our sidewalk repair program, and all the funding initiatives that are associated with that. That includes work orders that are submitted to consultants to do design work, and then ultimately to do construction work, help with procurement. So all assets of replacement of these assets.
Okay. Could you give us your educational background, please?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree from the College of Engineering from the University of Florida. That's it.
Okay. And you are a professional engineer?
Yes, I'm a professional engineer, correct.
Okay. Give us your job history prior to your arrival at the county, please.
I have quite a few years in the consulting firm. Once I graduated, I worked in Orlando for an engineering firm called CPH. Then moved over to Tampa Bay area, and during the recession started at the city of Largo. I was a senior engineer over stormwater and transportation assets for approximately 6 years. Then went over to the city of Dunedin, where I was a senior section engineer over stormwater and transportation assets for approximately 2 years, and then I came here to Hillsborough County.
Okay. And you were a member of the committee that was evaluating the top 3 firms to be awarded the contract?
Yes, when I was invited to be a part of this committee, I believe it was in August of 2019. And I believe these meetings we started, it was December of 2019.
Okay. And how many meetings have you participated in?
I would say I have been a part of quite a few CCNAs. I can't remember the exact number because I have been doing this for nearly 20 years at the city of Largo, city of Dunedin, and now Hillsborough County. I would say a minimum 5.
Okay. You've heard during Applied Sciences presentation that they felt that you used right-of-way criteria in your evaluation. Could you talk about the applicability of right-of-way in your analysis of the short list?
Yes. So to clarify, there's 9 engineering firms here, and they are all professional engineering firms, and they submitted with the assumption that they have good experience. And so 9 qualified engineering firms. As a professional engineer, I have a code of ethics that I cannot say an engineering firm is good or bad. And so the due diligence and the process here is that they make a submittal, and in their submittal, there are points for their resumes of the individuals that they are proposing to come after this miscellaneous general contract with the county. They get points for projects that they put in writing, actual projects and details about the projects that they worked in there. And then they get points for schedule and workload if they're available and the location of their engineering firm. And so there is a big burden on the reviewer, myself, Dia, and David, to review these packages on our own time and then therefore come up with some understanding and looking at the qualifications of their staff and looking at the qualifications of the projects that they are submitting in their packages. This is qualification based, but at the same time, it is also professional engineer. I have done many, many years of modeling, of design, and construction. I have not only designed it, but I've supervised it. So I and myself and my team, I would say here, we've all reviewed, we looked at projects. And not all the engineering firms have the same projects when they're bringing them to the table. And so when I look at projects, I'm looking at the stormwater modeling that occurred over in a wetland area. That's very relevant. And then all the stormwater modeling that then migrates and impacts our roads, our bridges. It all starts with the modeling. Every project that an engineer typically gets involved with, if it is stormwater related, you're going to have modeling. And so I think that that was the understanding that, I understand that that's what we're talking about is right of way. And so ultimately the right of way is the land that the county owns. And that's where we're going to do a project unless the consultant, makes a suggestion that we need to go buy the land and put a pond there. And if that's the case, so be it. We'll put the funds there to get it. But for most of the part, our designs that are going to come from the modeling, which Applied Sciences is very qualified, and so are all these engineering firms. They're all very qualified in modeling. And to answer earlier, I heard a question. We do diverse backgrounds for the engineers. We don't want everybody having worked with these engineering firms, so that they can bring new eyes to the review of the formally submitted documents.
Okay. At this time, Ms. Mandel, the county has no further questions of Mr. Taveneri.
Thank you. Are there any cross-examination questions for this witness? And again, as long as it stays conversational, we can go ahead and do that as a conversational back and forth.
Yes. Thank you again, Ms. Mandel. Mr. Taveneri, again, Joe Goldstein for Applied Services. Just a few questions. Is your recollection consistent with mine that when you were, prior to announcing your scores for Applied, you spoke specifically about their right-of-way experience, correct?
I don't remember, but go on.
All right, I'll share my screen just to give you a sense. Okay, I'm looking at page 520 of the accumulated record, and if I go to 521, I'm just, because there's decimals there. You were the only evaluator who used decimals, correct?
I don't know. I use them all the time because we do this quite a bit for a lot of engineering firms.
But in this procurement, you were the only one who used decimals, right?
I use decimals.
So here in the tape, I have you starting out with, and this is at page 520, or on the timer, 5 minutes, 5:12:16, and you Applied was the first vendor, and what I read is you giving a description of your process, and you specifically mention, I was looking at their experience with right-of-way using road projects and what they're doing in right-of-ways. And then you go right into giving Applied scores. So at least in the public meeting on the tape, your primary analysis for Applied was looking at what they did in the public right-of-ways, correct?
No, I'd say that's incorrect. I was looking at all of their experience, all of their resumes, all of their projects. And they have lots of projects outside the right-of-way and in the right-of-way.
I get that, but I just want to I want to make sure this transcript and recording is correct. Well, that might have, you're saying that was what you considered in your head. Announced at the public meeting was, I was looking at their experience within the right-of-way using roadway projects.
I looked at all of their experience, and that is how I came up with my evaluation of their firm, along with the other 8 firms.
I'm going to showing you page 537 of the joint record. Actually, before I get to that, the RPS 20353 for roadway, stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain work is for professional engineering work specifically in the right of ways for Hillsborough County, correct?
Say that again?
The RPS 20353 for roadway, stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain work is specifically for professional engineering services in the right of way in that procurement, correct?
Is that this procurement or is that a separate procurement?
That's a separate procurement. The one, I think the evaluation meeting is Monday. You're involved in the stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain procurement.
Okay, so that's a separate.
Mr. Goldstein, is that something that has been admitted into evidence as it relates to this hearing?
Yes, Ms. Mandel, there were two things that you admitted. One was the other recording and transcript, and then it was this other solicitation that relates to the, our point number 2.
Okay, so for the purposes of the record, what you are discussing is not the instant appeal proceeding, but the other bid that you had requested to be submitted into evidence and that I had admitted as additional evidence. I think we need to clarify that because I think there might be some confusion. Do you have a document that you can show as it relates to that so that everyone can be on the same page?
We submitted it on the share site. I can show it if we need to, but I think now that we've talked it through, I think Mr. Tavaneri probably understands what it is, but I'll be glad to find it and put it up if necessary. But Mr. Tavaneri, do we need to put it up, or now that I'm sorry, I kind of launched into it without setting it up? You understand which additional procurement I'm talking about?
Ms. Mandel, I'm not sure if this is relevant to this proceeding. We're on our RPS 19296.2 about another one. I would ask that this line of questioning be excluded.
Mr. Goldstein, can you explain its relevance? Because I understood that the purpose behind bringing those other two procurements in was for the purposes of consensus scoring. Can you describe how this is relevant for the purposes of the record before I make a ruling?
Of course, yeah. So the stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain work, and that has already, you've supplemented the record with that. And my representation is when you read through the scope of that, it's for right-of-way work exclusively or predominantly professional engineering services, and Mr. Tavaneri is involved in that. And the relevancy is we're trying to show that the limited focus on right-of-way is much more akin to what that other procurement is asking for than in the instant procurement, where there's a much more extensive scope of services.
And Ms. Mandel, I would renew my objections on the grounds of relevancy, and also it's very speculative.
For the last part of your statement, Mr. Pope, I'm sorry.
I also feel, in addition to being not relevant, it's also speculative.
I'm sorry, thank you. I'm going to allow you to ask 2 questions on this issue, and then we'll move on because I'm not sure I completely understand the relevancy, but we'll go ahead and allow 2 questions and see where we go from there and have them be simple questions, and then let's move on because I'm tending to agree with Mr. Pope on that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Tavaneri, so the roadway, stormwater, culvert, cross drain, and side drain work, at least are we on the same page that you know which procurement I'm talking about?
I am aware it is an active solicitation and under a cone of silence to talk about that type of work. We have not even met yet. So I'm in that committee. However, there may be other committee members listening here.
And we're not going to talk about other than, and you'd agree with me that either the predominant or exclusive scope of that procurement is right-of-way work, correct?
I'm going to disagree with you because I'm aware of the scope of services on this general, miscellaneous, stormwater, and I'm looking all of the scope of services. They have watershed management plan, proficient modeling programs, program generations. If you go down, tool development, project management, land acquisition, miscellaneous stormwater program planning assistance, miscellaneous pump station analysis, miscellaneous drainage reviews, pollutant source tracking studies, groundwater modeling, and other miscellaneous stormwater services. This is a very general miscellaneous contract. We use contract vendors, professionals of this nature, and we pull them into drainage, all types of projects. So no, I disagree with you. Looking at all the bullet points that were included in the scope of services, although the title has modeling in it, all relevant drainage experience is looked at.
You're talking about.
I'm sorry, Mr. Willis, I am going to stop you here. I'm concerned that that is an active solicitation. I think it's appropriate for the idea that the bid speaks for itself and what the scope is, but I don't want to put the county in the position of having that particular solicitation become challenged because of this line of questioning. And since it's not specific to this, I think what I hear your point is that that's a specific right-of-way solicitation, and whether or not that is a separate question. Right-of-way questions are separate from the bid in this instance relating to stormwater. Is that in essence the point of your line of questioning? Because I do want us to be very careful here.
I think that is the point, and I'll move on to my last point. Thank you.
And can I respond to that? I just want to confirm these general miscellaneous contracts that we want a vendor, the type of work we give them doesn't apply outside of the right of way or in the right of way. It's all of the above. And again, we review their project submittals. They gave us 10 projects. They're the best projects to cover a very diverse type of work. Okay.
And just so we're clear, because I think Ms. Mandel didn't want you talking about the other procurement, you're talking about the instant procurement that we're protesting now.
Yeah, I was referencing the scope of services in this procurement we are talking about.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. I assume that, but that's a great point. When you went through the litany of what's in the procurement, you were talking about the present procurement, not the other procurement that I brought up.
I'm talking about the one that we are in the protest about. When I review all 9 engineering firms and I look at their projects and I look at their resumes, I'm looking at my score sheet over here. What are we evaluating? And I'm looking at the scope of services.
And just so it's clear, because I know I was a little confused, and I think Ms. Mandel could be confused too. When you went through the scope of services in your previous extensive answer, you were going through the scope of services in the procurement that's being protested, not the new one that we supplemented the record with, correct?
That is correct. So in this active conversation that we're dealing with Applied Sciences, in their scope of services that they provided evidence that they are qualified to do, it would be watershed modeling. That was just one bullet point. Floodway generations, FEMA, update support, flood investigation, miscellaneous stormwater program planning assistance, miscellaneous pump station analysis, other miscellaneous stormwater services. So miscellaneous drainage reviews. And as a designer,
I don't want to be rude because we don't want to be too adverse. I didn't ask you a question about that, but let's move on.
Let me interrupt here just so we make sure we're all on the same page. I understand that the testimony that I just heard relates directly to this particular scope of services and what would be analyzed in terms of this bid. what I understood the question to be is that there was another bid outstanding, which is currently outstanding, that is seeking more specific services within the right of way. And that was your line of questioning, Mr. Goldstein. I am concerned that that's an active pending bid and putting the county in the position of answering specific questions when there's a cone of silence is concerning to me. So what I would rather do with that is you have made that part of the record. I can review on its face what is within that scope. I have enough technical expertise to understand the difference. And I can go ahead and look at those two issues and make that determination. I understand, Mr. Goldstein, you have the right to ask cross-examination, but we also cannot be placing the county in a position where they can't answer something because they're in cone of silence. So I will go ahead and I can take a look at that without affecting another bid, which I think would be appropriate for us to go ahead and move on from here unless you have questions not related to that.
I do have just one other area. I just wanted to make clear the witness was answering more questions I wasn't even asking. So I wasn't going any further. I think the point was made. Yeah, I appreciate that. So one last point in two areas, I guess. So do you recall a specific conversation by the evaluators in this procurement where you were going to use averaging to reach a consensus?
I don't know. I don't remember if that was asked.
And I'm going to share my screen, and this will be my last area. So I'm showing on the screen, I believe it's page 537, excuse me, and I'll blow it. I'll make it a little bit low. And these are the individual scores that you all read out on your record, Mr. Tavaneri. And then it had the total and the averages that matches up with the official score sheet. At any point during your meeting, were you aware that your total, your subtotals, if you looked at them as a ranking, you ranked applied sciences worst, and your other evaluators ranked them either the best or the second best? Did that ever become aware to you during the evaluation meeting?
So like I said before, I bring my scores, how I evaluate these consulting firms based on their personal resumes, the projects that they submitted in the package, their schedule, their workload, and their location. That's how we get 100 points. I brought my scores to the meeting. And so I looked very diligently at their resumes of each of their individuals and very diligently at the projects they submitted.
Sure, and I'm not questioning your score right now. I'm trying to ask a little bit more specific. And just so we're clear, for the award, there were only 30 points, not 100 points. Three areas, 10 points each.
You're talking about the scoring from the presentations, not actually based on the original submittals that they made. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because the original scores are irrelevant. They're not factored into who gets the contracts. You understand that, correct?
That is part of the process, right? And so I'm looking at all the scores. We're looking at these scores. So go ahead, now that you've clarified.
Yeah, but I want to make sure you and I are on the same page for Ms. Mandel. It's these, and I'm looking on it's these three scores out of 30 that decide who got the top three in the contract here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the previous scores out of 100, those weren't discussed during the final meeting, correct?
No,
Even though-
I don't. It is very important that you understand that in their submittal documentation, they are bringing to table the professional engineers they're going to use on projects. If they come to the presentation and those individuals are no longer with the firm, well, that has some relevance on their qualifications. I don't know if that happened here. I'm just letting you know that we do look at the packages. They're part of their experience, and it's always there. But the presentations, ultimately, for the chair, they're going to be working hand in hand with this professional engineering firm. So we want to know who the project manager is. We want to know their background. That's the presentation.
And I apologize, Mr. Tavernari. I'm not understanding you whatsoever because I'm asking you a pretty specific, important question about the decision here was based on these 30, the potential of awarding 30 points, right?
Correct. Right.
Okay. So why are you telling, what relevance about project people not being on there? I don't understand why you were saying that. What's that got to do with anything with the 30 points? That went into your scoring, I guess,
Ms.
right?
Mandel, I would object here. This is becoming more adversarial than I think you had initially.
I think I understood what he was saying, and I think the idea, I think what he's trying to say, from what I'm hearing, is that in evaluating this during the interview process, he doesn't come without any information as it relates to the firms. And I think, he's trying to articulate that, and it may not be coming across in the proper way. And I would ask if that is a fair representation of what I just heard so that we can move on to the next point.
That's a fair representation.
Hear you saying is you come into those interviews with that level of information, but when you do the ultimate scoring, it is based upon the interviews and based upon what is occurring during that process. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm saying this so I can understand it, so we can kind of move on to the next point, which I will turn it back over to Mr. Goldstein. And I know it's cumbersome. Let's try and keep this more conversational if we can.
Yes, and I appreciate that, Ms. Mandel, and I just, my perception is the witness was answering something that I didn't even ask him. So let me go back. I want to make sure the question that I wanted to talk to you about, sir, is during this scoring, and I'm going to go back and share my screen again. And I'm just going to focus on applied sciences. During the scoring, were you aware that as to the relative scores amongst the 6 vendors, if you took your scores and looked at them as rankings, that you had applied sciences as the worst of the 6? Were you aware of that?
Madam Hearing Master, I'm going to object again. This is redundant. He's already asked this question. It's been asked and answered.
I'm going to allow him to ask this question because I'm not sure I heard an answer to this question. So why don't we go ahead and answer this question? And we are getting past lunchtime, and possibly I was hopeful we didn't have to take a break, but it appears we're going to have to. So can we just wrap up this line of questioning and hopefully wrap up the cross-examination and the presentation of the county, and then we can go ahead and take a break?
Yeah, I'm done after the witness answers that question or some follow-up. So, Mr. Tavernari, again, were you aware at any time during the scoring meeting that you had, if you look at your scores and benchmark them against the other 5, that you ranked applied sciences or scored them or ranked them, however you want to see, the worst of the 6. Were you aware of that?
Can you zoom out on this document you're looking at?
Of
'Cause
course.
forgive me. I mean, this is over.
No, not at all, not at all. So let me, so
So-
there's 26.8 for Atkins. I'll just tell you what this represents. For Atkins, your score was 29.4. So you had Atkins first, and then actually with a tie with JEA, 29.4. And then Wood, you had 28.6 as which would have been third. DMRP, 28.9, and Tavernaria, 27.6. So when you put your total scores, excuse me, I said Tavernaria, I didn't mean to say that. That's your name, Jacobs. Excuse me, Jacobs 5th. So with that, so I'll repeat the question now showing you that.
I think the best that I can answer this is just looking at applied sciences 26.8, Atkins 29.4, JEA at 29.4, Wood at 28.6, DRMP at 28.9, and then the last firm, if you scroll to the right, these are all very 27.6. All of these firms, like I said, are very qualified to do the work. And so there is some level. I mean, this is a very difficult process that we're dealing with. And so those are the evaluated scores that I provided based on what was given in the presentations.
Ms. Mandel, I don't want to cross the line and also through you.
Let me go ahead and just to sort of take this back and see if I can't get us to move on. I think the question is, and I hear what you just said, Mr. Tavernieri. The question is, did you know that they had been ranked 6th by you during this process?
No, I did not.
I think that answers that question then.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. I have no further questions. And as far as breaking, because of the leeway you gave me in the beginning, my closing will be 5, maybe 6 minutes. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Be to move on and let's get this completed. So if we think we can do that quickly, when I say quickly in the next 45 minutes, then my preference would be to complete the hearing.
I think this is the last witness. I'll obviously let Mr. Pope speak, but I think I think we're done.
That's correct, Ms. Mandel.
Mr. Pope, is this was your last witness?
Yes, ma'am.
So if there's no other witnesses from the county, then really what we would be doing at this time is moving into rebuttal. And let's go ahead. I mean, we can just, if we think if you want to take a 4-minute break, 3-minute break, just to kind of transition, or if we're ready to just continue forward, we can move into rebuttal. And if we're going to do that, we would start with the applied science, the appellant party.
Ms. Mandel, with the leeway you gave me for cross and the record that exists in our presentation, let me just check my phone, make sure someone's not texting me. I don't see
because I
any.
forgot there was one question I did want to ask, and I apologize. Trying to do the process plus get all the information it sometimes overtakes your brain. Before we moved out of the county presentation, Mr. Pope, if you can just indulge me, I wanted to ask Mr. Stromer a question. Good. A process question.
Yes, ma'am.
He's ready? Okay, thank you. My question to you is, if you're doing a procurement that is only using individual scoring, is there an opportunity for the scorers during that process to discuss their scores, or is it simply a function of, here is my score, and then you submit that to the whoever the procurement manager is for that particular item, and they put the scores together, put it back into the record, and that's the closure. I'm just trying to see if there is a difference in terms of procedurally individual scoring and how those are handled.
Thank you. Ms. Mandel, the policy manual, the procedures manual really gives the guidance. I mean, the individual scoring is very clear in that the scores are captured and given to procurement services, and then you tabulate them, and that is what it is. Which there's not a lot of room for discussion there. If it's going to be, if it's through consensus, then there needs to be discussion. It's going to be through consensus, and that's the primary difference, is that there are discussions through consensus, because ultimately, however they arrive at that score, there's an agreement, and they've had the opportunity to discuss and share information. Not simply, say, in the case of a normal RFP, or even with CCNA, where they tabulate individually and they come to the meeting and they share them, and then it's done. So I would agree with what you said.
I'm just trying to understand the difference, because that is one of the issues on the table. And I wanted to have that conversation or ask that question prior to going into rebuttal. So that is something that would be part of the record for rebuttal. And that was really the only question I had. And I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Goldstein, but please feel free to move on to rebuttal.
Ms. Mandel, I believe in my closing, I'll address that limited issue. So rather than be repetitive, as long as I can, point out some things in the record, I see no need for a separate rebuttal.
Thank you. Is there any, we'll move on to the intervener. Is there any rebuttal that you would like to put on the record?
Ms. Mandel, if it may please the hearing master, I just want to make sure I'm not confusing rebuttal with closing. I don't have any rebuttal argument. No, ma'am.
The process doesn't specifically call for closing, but I think it is appropriate to allow everybody a closing opportunity versus a rebuttal opportunity. So we'll go ahead and move on into the county and their rebuttal process, and if they have any rebuttal.
Thank you.
The county also does not have rebuttal. We will save our argument for our closing.
And with that, what we will go ahead and do is move into closing arguments, and I will go ahead and ask the Applied Science, Mr. Goldstein, to go ahead and give his closing statement.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. Again, you should grant or sustain our bid protest appeal for 3 independent reasons. The county here used individual scoring rather than consensus scoring. Mr. Tavernieri's announced justification for a score was too narrow, limited to right-of-way, as described in the transcript, and the evaluators had the ability to make 4 awards based on the contemporaneous record that we pointed to during our presentation. Let me, and I'm going to be brief because I've probably said everything that I want to say 2 times or maybe 3. So I'm not going to, as much as I love to hear my own voice, I'm going to be short. The code or manual is clear: consensus versus individual scoring. I'll have 2 points, I think. There's never any real discussion we're going to use averaging as a consensus. That would only, again, averaging is defined as individualized scoring. And that's what occurred here. We showed you an example of what a consensus scoring was. And this process they had an announced justification of their scores, and they all listened to each other, but there was no deliberation. There was nothing there where you try to reach a consensus, and then if you couldn't, then you go to individual scoring. to say that they chose to do averaging, which I don't think the record reflects. It talks about that they did average, but they didn't say we're going to do this rather than try and reach consensus, is just not what occurred, and it's not what consensus is. And again, I'll point you to not only their code, but that best data and analytics case that explains averaging is purely a mathematical step, not a reasoned analysis. And the perfect analogy is the jury deliberation process. You would never just average and come to a verdict. And that's what happened here, which is only allowed if time's not appropriate. And the fact that procurement didn't type it up. Under the CCNA and the statute, it's got to be a public meeting. And here they chose to use consensus and they didn't do it. And like I said, the case that we presented in our brief explained why it's fatal here. And it's more important, and this is why I asked Mr. Tavaneri that question at the end that clearly he didn't want to answer, and you had to ask him the question. Did you know that your score was the worst for applied sciences? Forget the minute difference. We only lost by 0.2. It was close, but a true consensus would have been, hey, wait a second. We both have them the best and the second best. You have them as worst. Are you comfortable with that? Are you missing something? Are you only looking at right of way, or are you giving right of way too much emphasis? It should have been brought to his attention. And that's what consensus is about. If they had done it and he still said, I look, all those things, when I asked him, were you aware that he went into the litany of, I took into account their personnel and their other projects. That's fine if you accept that. It's not stated on the record. But on our point number 1, he was never made aware, and he wasn't aware. You're out of line. You're a material variance of the other 2 evaluators. And in a true consensus, there would be, I'm comfortable with that. But that's what's missing here. And if you remember when we listened to the tape of that other proceeding, that's what happened. It has nothing to do with the point scores are close or they're not close. Minute point scores made a difference here. We lost this award where the incumbent with the highest CAPE scores, the best past performance, and the only incumbent not getting this because there was no opportunity for Mr. Tavaneri especially to be made aware that you're looking at this results very differently than your other experienced colleagues. Again, maybe you would have come out the same way, but because they use individual scoring, it's defective, and you must grant our protest. On the second issue, again, the record speaks for itself. When you read the transcript, when you listen to the report, the only justification given for the score is the right of way. Too narrow, too limited. The other procurement, again, the other procurement is more narrowly right of way, and that contributes and bootstraps to our point number 1. And finally, as to enlarging the amount of awardees, 2 points there. Again, the transcript is clear. They said we could if it's close. And I appreciate Ms. Gao's, statement today, but again, I would point to you to the contemporaneous record. Someone told the evaluators they had the authority, and here it's a fatal error that they're not exercising it when there's this discrepancy, as we point to, between 2 evaluators and a third, and there's this natural break when it's only a 0.2 difference between 3 and 4. And again, the best care case is cited to, I went back and checked. If we didn't provide you a copy of the case, we can do that. The best care case, very similar to this in the context of a multiple award. In that case, The state of Florida said we're maximum. There was a statute, maximum 4, and the Agency for Healthcare Administration gave a bonus of 5. And the Best Care challenged it and said, wait a second. We bid, we knew that we were only going to have to share this with 3 other people. It affects our ratios, how much business we're going to have, all the same arguments that the intervener is making here. And the first DC has said, no, you don't have standing to raise those arguments. When a procurement gives the discretion for multiple awards, the government has the discretion to make a 4th award. And so whether as an independent reason or as a remedy for the first or second reasons, you should grant the 4th award here. It's consistent with the natural break, and it fixes the problem that we've got. But for those 3 independent reasons, they used individual scoring. And just one last thing on that, if you allow what happened here to be consensus, then you might as well do away with consensus scoring, because the contrast is clear between that other procurement. They announced their justification. That's not deliberation. Here's why I did it, because this is a public meeting and I want the public to hear why I'm giving this point score. That's not consensus. That's a unilateral discussion. There was no debate. There was no deliberations. Those 3 reasons. Thank you for the time. Appreciate everyone's opportunity to be heard, and we look forward to the next step. Thank you, Ms. Mandel.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to the intervening party for any closing they would like to get.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. May it please the hearing master, I'll be very, very brief. And again, thank everybody for their indulgence today. I think we need to remember, and I know the hearing master is aware of this, but the county's action here is only arbitrary if it's not supported by logic or necessary facts. And it's capricious only if it's adopted without thought or reason or is irrational. There's been nothing in the record here today. There's been no testimony that indicates that any of that occurred here. The fact of the matter is that it's been much in the way of attorney argument, Mr. Goldstein's opinion on how the consensus scoring was handled in both of these RPSs that have been discussed today, the subject RPS here and the RPS, I think it's 205353. At the end of the day, Florida law is clear that a protester's disagreement with the agency's conclusions do not provide a basis for objection and cannot provide the basis to overturn the county's action here. I'll address specifically again the consensus versus individual scoring issue. I think the record is abundantly clear. I'll agree with Mr. Goldstein that the record's abundantly clear that there was there was a deliberation. I agree with him that the record's clear, not about the final analysis on it. There's 40 minutes of discussion between all 3 of these committee members. While these individual scores are discussed, there is deliberation. It's indisputable that that's the case. There's an hour of discussion in the RPS 205353, and then there's 40 minutes of discussion in this particular procurement. I believe there were actually more criteria in the RPS 205353 as opposed to this particular subject procurement, so that may indicate the additional time. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the record, which I know the hearing master has, there is deliberation as to the decision and the ultimate decision of the county and how those firms were decided. At the end of the day, there has been absolutely no evidence and or testimony that supports Applied Sciences protest here. Again, there's been a lot of conclusory statements made and opinions relating to how the evaluation committee scoring was handled. As to the issue on the 3 versus 4 firms, I disagree with Mr. Goldstein in that the RPS does make it clear that no more than 3 firms would be awarded this procurement. It states that in the procurement itself. And on top of that, and I don't think I mentioned this in my opening, and I believe it is in the materials at Exhibit 16, that the protest is untimely on that point, because that aspect of the protest is associated with the specification terms and conditions of the applicable procurement here, and not the substance of it. So that protest angle should have been provided 5 days prior to the response submittal deadline. So I would argue that that is untimely. Again, our position here, Atkins' position here is indicated in that's the notice of intervention submission at Exhibit 16. But I appreciate the brief time you've allowed me to provide this closing. Thanks so much, and everybody stay safe.
We'll move on to the county for their closing.
Thank you, Hearing Master. Going in the order that Mr. Goldstein laid out in his opening remarks, starting with the individual versus consensus. And individual scoring, as you're aware, that would be something that would be, the scores would be submitted to a committee for it to evaluate, not the actual committee that is hearing the firms. This case, Ms. Gao testified that they met ahead of time. They decided that they would use the individual scores as a jump-off point to determine how to rank the firms. That's the definition of consensus. And also, they all signed off on those rankings at the end of the process. This is something that was submitted, just the raw scores to another individual or committee. This is something that all three of the committee members went over the scores and decided among themselves how the ranking would be, and then they signed off on the ranking of them. There was some discussion of Marcel Tavaneri's right-of-way discussion, and that wasn't the only thing that he considered. That was just one of the things that he considered based on his own work experience. There was also no allegation that he gave more weight to other firms based on that same right-of-way criteria. That was just one of the factors. Whether or not he knew that he'd ranked them 6 and the others that ranked them higher is really immaterial, because again, this was a consensus that they ultimately convened and they spoke with each other about how they were going to rank these firms, and then they signed off on how they were going to rank them. That wasn't a factor that was that affected the others, the fact that he ranked applied sciences last. There was no indication that he tried to rank them out of the top 3. I think it's also important to point out that when the process originally began, there were only supposed to be 5 firms under consideration, and applied sciences only added later as a 6th. Mr. Goldstein describes a process that really isn't part of Hillsborough County's procurement process. He almost, by speaking of Mr. Tavaneri ranking applied sciences 6th, it's almost as if he thinks that what should happen is you take all the scores and then you toss out the bottom one. That wouldn't be consensus scoring. What they did, I think, is more proper. All of the scores, all the factors were under consideration. They didn't just throw out a score just because it wasn't as high as the others. The county is given wide range in this procurement process. Reasonable people can disagree that these aren't computers that are doing this evaluation. These are individuals who are using their life experiences as well as their professional experience to determine which they think are the top firms that should go forward. There's really only 3 remedies that would appear that are possible here, that that applied sciences be added as a 4th, which the rules don't provide for, and that would be unfair to the other firms who did make the process. It could also dilute the work that would be given out if there were 4 as opposed to 3. Also, there could be a remand where it goes back to be reconsidered, or it could be rejected, and then they would have to start the process over from the beginning. But Hillsborough County contends that we sent out our procurement. It was followed as it was supposed to. There were only supposed to be 3 firms, and that's exactly what they ultimately selected. And for that reason, we feel that the hearing master should reject the protest. The standard is arbitrary and capricious. We feel that if fourth firm were added, and instead of the 3 that originally were advertised for, that would violate that standard. So for these reasons, we would ask that the hearing master reject the protest of Applied Science.
Ms. Mandel,
Thank
I
you.
apologize. I apologize. I just would like if I could have a minute or less of a rebuttal and closing. It is my standard. I'm not going to repeat myself. I wanted to address an issue that Mr. Pope brought up in his closing about it was only supposed to be 6 and only supposed to be 5 and then 6 in the shortlisting, which I didn't address in my closing.
Go ahead and allow that with Mr. Pope having the right to comment or give any argument as it relates to what you're saying, but let's keep it brief because I think I've been given a lot of latitude for how people can manage this process, but I'd like to keep that brief so we're not going on a back and forth basis. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to point out procedurally what happened. Mr. Pope and the witness, I think, are correct. Their original shortlisting included 5. We filed a protest like we've done here, and they took corrective action without admitting that we were evaluated improperly. They brought us in for shortlisting. So I just don't want there to be any, we challenged that we shouldn't have been 6, that we should have been in the top 5. We never got a hearing on that because they just let us in the shortlisting where you start from scratch. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. We don't concede that we were the 6th best in the first round. We challenged that. We didn't have a hearing on it. They let us in the shortlisting. So I just wanted to clarify that procedural point. I appreciate the additional time.
Feel free to comment on that. I was aware from reading the record that was the case, but frankly, that's not something that I'm looking at. I don't think that's part of this process. I understand, though, it was part of the previous process. So, Mr. Pope, for the purposes of the record, go ahead and make any comment you'd like to make on that issue. But just so everybody's aware, I was aware of that, and it was clear in the record that was the case. But I am not considering that as part of this process.
Ms. Mandel, the county has no further comments.
Thank you. And I appreciate y'all moving through this very quickly. I was thinking this was going to take all day, and I'm pleased that we were able to conclude all of this with the amount of documents and information in the record. I understand that the ordinance does allow me 5 business days to make a ruling. I intend to make it within 10 days unless there's 10 business days unless there's any objection. There's a lot of information in the record. I'm not going to ask for the transcript because I think I've taken sufficient notes to be able to deal with this, so we don't have to worry at this point unless anybody else wants the transcript, that I'm going to need the transcript. But I do believe there's some things I need to re-review, as well as some of the case law that was described today. So unless there's any objection, I would tell you that you will receive the ruling from me within 10 business days.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. We certainly have no objection to the 10 business days.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. We agree. No objection to the 10 days.
And thank you, Ms. Mandel. Hillsborough County has no objection to the 10 days.
And thank you. I very much appreciate how professionally everybody has handled this hearing, especially given it being in this virtual environment. And I hope everybody stays safe and has a good weekend.
Same to you. Thank you much.
Included.
Thank you all.